Jupiter moving into Gemini. This is interesting. It's much more interesting than we maybe anticipated. And I think there's more going on than is being talked about out there. So let's see what we can get into in this conversation around our own personal journey, like what's happening in your life with this Jupiter moving into Gemini, what we can look forward to, what we can let go of. There's some letting go. Isn't that interesting? We think Jupiter, blessings, grace, bombs, good luck, but there's some very serious letting go that's being asked when Jupiter moved into Gemini and will continue to be asked. He's about to aspect Pluto, which is death and rebirth, right? We'll talk about that. He's also moved into Gemini and hit Sedna. Sedna's at 0 degrees of Gemini. Jupiter's conjunct Sedna. Sedna is all about letting go. It's all about deep transformation. Pluto, which is where Jupiter comes into a trine at 1 degree, is also about deep transformation. Isn't that interesting? So I want to go into that, and I want to just see what else arises for us in this conversation. So my invitation is to sit tight, because it sometimes takes me a little while to get into like I don't know. There's something I feel like is going to come through. I don't know what that is. But there's something. And it usually takes me a little bit of like a warming up and like building up of the Shakti or the energy for it to reveal itself. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I just have a feeling it might. So invitation to stick around for that. I'll let you know, maybe if I can even point that out when that happens in our conversation, if it happens in our conversation. All right. Regardless if it happens or not, there's a lot to explore here. There's a lot to feel into. There's a lot to think about. Let me give you an overall theme of Jupiter. And just to start to feel into this for yourself, you may want to sort of open up to, I don't know, like a deeper gnosis within as we have this conversation. It's almost like you turn your mystic mind on. You turn your like shamanic eyes and ears on so that you can sort of start to sense things in a more mystical way. Let this be a little bit of a mystical conversation. You might feel it in your heart. You might have chills, like the truth chills when something really resonates with you. So invitation to just let a deeper conversation be happening. Let a deeper conversation be happening, not just this left brain logical conversation that's happening. All right. Many layers going on here, and it's just going to get deeper and wider and wilder as we go into this. So, all right, let's first feel into Jupiter. Archetypal energy of Jupiter is a grace bomb, right? If you just were to feel into the raw energetics of Jupiter, it's grace bomb, it's expansive, it's no limits, it's bust through glass ceilings. It's also expand beyond your comfort zone. So we always think Jupiter, oh my gosh, yeah, blow through glass ceilings. But it's expand beyond your comfort zone. And I don't know that we were really ready for that. On the 25th, when Jupiter moved into Gemini, hit Sedna, which makes it bigger, deeper, more transformation from a deeper depth. So I think we're kind of talking about Jupiter as like a Gemini surface level transformation, airy transformation. Like, oh yeah, Jupiter just moved from Earth, Taurus sign, Earth sign, Taurus, into Gemini, air. Okay, cool, quick, rapid, move faster. You know, the more surface level. Gemini is just a more surface level kind of an energy, right? It's quicker, it's more rapid. It's like thoughts, the speed of thoughts, where like Taurus is like the physical and like the energy needs to move through physical object. It just takes longer versus like the synapses of the nervous system, just like bang, pew, gone, thought, boom, quick moves. That's Gemini, right? So a lot of us, I think, we're talking about, or astrologers were talking about, or we were maybe anticipating this to just be like, wow, there's a quickening. And that can be happening for sure. Because again, this is multi-layer. So a quickening, like, whoa, Jupiter almost feels weirdly a little bit freer. Jupiter feels like, oh, the expansion can go faster. The expansion can be much more rapid. The expansion can like travel further because I only have to make it through air instead of Earth, Taurus. air, Gemini. I only have to make it through thoughts instead of the bones of the body, like the blood and the bones and the organs of the body. I actually only have to make the expansion through thought. So can you feel into what this might be pointing toward? I'll share what this might be pointing toward is some of this like this quickening, rapid expansion can be easier to think about, can be easier to grasp or cognize or see or like sense into, right? Easier in that way. Very easy, right? Here's my expansion. Here's my growth. Here's where my growth lies. Here's where my expansion lies. Here's where my blowing past the upper limits, blowing past the glass ceilings. Here's where it is. But I can't ground it in. It's harder to ground in. It's hard. This is Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini is a tough aspect. Jupiter is associated with Sagittarius. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Sagittarius is opposite Gemini. It's a tough place for Jupiter to be in. It's a tough place, right? For different reasons. It's also a freeing place. So there is the both and that's part of Gemini. This is also part of Gemini energy. It's not either or. It's not right or wrong, this or that. It's right and wrong, this and that, right? It's not either or, it's both and. It's both and. And it's also infinitely more creative in opportunities and options, almost to the point where some of us could feel frozen with too much choice. Like there's too much choice, there's too much information coming, there's too much thought that we can be like a deer in the headlights. Like we literally go into a freeze pattern of I'm overwhelmed by the amount of information and the amount of choices here. Isn't that interesting? So it's something to watch for and to be very conscious of and very cognizant of is, all right, if my growth and expansion is really easily happening in thought, great. Let my mind expand. Let my mind be blown, right? Like blow my mind over what's possible for me. This is also potentials. It's also your potentials. This is Sedna. This is Sedna on 0 degrees of Gemini, which flavors this whole journey. It flavors Jupiter's whole year in Gemini. The fact that he meets up with Sedna first, then he meets up with Pluto a few days later. This is wild. All at 0 and 1 degrees. Sedna's at 0 degrees of Gemini. It's a perfect conjunction. He has to cross Sedna. It's like she's like holding the gates of, well, this is called the gates of hell, right? She's holding not hell like bad hell or hell like religious hell, just like the gates of deep transformation. The gates of you transforming from one form literally to another form. Sedna is you transforming from mortal to immortal. It's true. You transforming from human to goddess. That's the archetypal energy of Sedna. But in the transforming from human to goddess, right? Goddess, you're reaching your greatest potentials, right? Greatest potentials, greatest capacities in this life. That's what she's all about, right? Your most magnificent self expressed. And Jupiter's all about your expansion, your most magnificent self expressed, blowing up your upper limits, any glass ceilings. That's all Jupiter, right? That's all Jupiter. But Sedna's like, okay, let's go for the big one. Let's go for the big one. You say you want transformation, sunshine. I'll give it to you. You say you want to be superhuman. Let's do this thing. That's legit Sedna. That's really this Jupiter transit in Gemini. P.S. This is like part of the part. When I said like there's going to be some really good stuff that unfolds, but we have to get there, this is one of them. So let's bookmark this one. Let's bookmark this one. This is point number 1. We'll see if there is another one that comes, and I'll let you know when we get to that point too. All right. So Sedna's saying this, like, we're not just going to let this be any old Jupiter transit through Gemini, which happens once every 12 years, right? This entire year, This entire year, Jupiter's in Gemini for an entire year. This entire year is going to be devoted to you moving into your greatness. Sedna is the archetypal energy, the part of self, right? Archetypal energy, that's an energy within you. It's an energy out there. And the astrology points to this particular flavor of energy, this particular like patterning of energetics. And this particular patterning of energetics, it's not just a miraculous like, oh, poof, you go from human to goddess, just like that. You know, it's not like an easy transition. It's like the Little Mermaid, right? It's like the Little Mermaid when she goes from mermaid to human. It wasn't like super pretty. Just feel into that. Like it wasn't super pretty. She has to learn to like breathe air. She has to learn to walk with feet. She doesn't have flippers. Like it's a transition. So feeling into that, it's a transition. It's a letting go of the previous you. So in the Sedna myth, she gets her fingers chopped off by her father. What does this represent? What does this feel like? What does this mean? What does this open up in us? What is this pointing to? Why is Jupiter moving into Gemini so weird? It's letting go of the things that got us where we are now. The things that we might feel loyal to because they got us where we are now. Sedna's father got her to that point in her life, having to let go of the loyalty to something that no longer supported her highest path forward. And she was forced to let go of it. So feel into that at this moment in time, being forced to let go of it. She's holding on to the edge of a boat. This is the myth. She's holding on to the edge of a boat. She doesn't let go of her own free will and go, oh my gosh, I'm going to let go and it's going to be so glorious. I'm going to turn into a goddess after I drowned. It's not what she's thinking. She is clinging and holding on for dear life. And what happens is external forces, the thing that she's totally loyal to, you know, the thing that she's still attached to, still loyal to, still clinging on to by her fingertips, right, is taken from her. Her fingertips are taken from her. External forces forced her to let go. Feel into that and watch out for that in your world over this week for sure, while Jupiter is perfectly conjunct Sedna. So this last week of May, first week of June, I would say, while Jupiter is perfectly conjunct Sedna. Watch out for that. What is the external world saying to you? Really and truly, this is point number 2. So we're at the point number 2, like where I said, like, there's going to be some good stuff that unfolds. This is point number 2. What is the external world saying to you? What is it saying? What is the external world? What are the fingertips? What are your life fingertips that are being cut off? You know, like what is it that's wanting to be cut off? What part of your old life, just feel into that. Your old life are you clinging on to? What part of your old life are you clinging on to? That's preventing you from your greatest expansion, your greatest expression of self, your truest self, your gifts, like becoming made manifest, your greatest gifts, right? Your unique geniuses, your greatest potentials, all opening up and all unfolding in you. And there are things in your environment that no longer support your greatness. And now is a moment when everything is conspiring to remove those things from our lives, remove those things. And that can be part of what some of us are experiencing so much pain around, or so much like awkwardness or crunchiness, is we're holding on to things that we feel loyal to. This is part number 3. Feel into this because I might label off some really good stuff that you may want to reflect on, journal on, deepen into, meditate on, talk to a soul friend about, because some of these things are hard for us to get to. They can be hard for us to get to because they're deep. They're deep. Sometimes they're really deep. They're in deeper places and it takes a bit to access them. Okay, so Let me try to find that thread into these questions again. There's always like this energetic doorway to walk through, and that's what I'm kind of looking for in this moment. Okay, so things in our lives that we feel loyal to, that we feel like we owe something to. It's gotten us this far in our lives. It's been so good. Why is it maybe not now? It was so true last week, last month, last year. Why does it feel weird now? It can also be things around healing. This is a strange one, but healing, like it's time for me to let go of this illness that I have gotten a lot of attention for, that has been like a security blanket for me. Feel into that. This illness, this pattern that has been a security blanket for me. It's kept me somehow being able to maneuver power in a way. Like I used to get sick as a kid. It was an old psychosomatic thing. I would get sick as a kid when I would feel, I'm very empathic and very sensitive. And when I would feel overwhelmed by too many people, too much, I would get sick. And that would be my body's wisdom pattern really at the time, because I had no options. I was a little kid. I couldn't set strong boundaries, right? It was, no, you're going to the family party, and then we're going to the next family party, and then we're going to the next family party. It's like 8 Christmases later, Sabrina's really, really sick because I'm just overwhelmed as a little one. And so the pattern was I would get sick. And so feel into things like that those are upper limits. Those are limiting patterns. Those psychosomatic, that's why I'm saying these things can be deeper. They might not be super accessible. They might not just pop into mind, right? It'll take a little bit of like meditating in these places, some guided journeys into these places, some deep conversations into these places. Altered states of consciousness are very, very powerful for getting into these places. All right. If you don't have a place or a way or a guided journey into these places, the challenge replays. If you miss the Rewilding Challenge, they're open for the next 3 days, 2 days. I don't know, whenever this podcast comes out, they're only open until the 30th. So if you're seeing this before May 30th, jump in there. It's $47 for like 10 hours of rewilding. That's ridiculous. That's totally ridiculous. And there's a Jupiter activation in there. Do the Jupiter activation in there. Do the Jupiter activation repeatedly. Go into some of these darker places. Kali brings a truth sword. We work with 7 archetypal energies in there. Kali brings a truth sword, and there's a moment where it's just what needs to be let go of, and it's right in your face, and it helps to cut through, right? It's all guided journeys into this territory with archetypal activations and initiations. Like it's crazy. $47. We're silly, but that was our like fun challenge VIP offer, and we just feel to keep it and offer it to anybody who wants lifetime access to the challenge replays. Anyways, that's the craziest thing we've done. There'll be a link in the description to go join that if you are feeling that. So I would sit, here's what I would do outside of doing the challenge, but I would sit and I would go into what's holding me back. I have like these heart patterns, these old heart patterns that are just like learned family patterns. They're like ancestral patterns of like, and here's how we quickly protect our heart. Like we go into a state of like super independence, if there's a way for me to describe it, like a state of super independence to protect my heart. It's not serving. It's an absolute upper limit. It's totally outworn its welcome. Its use by date is way past. That's something to feel into right now and dive into it. And maybe you even ask your most intimate people, hey, where do I have patterns of closure? Where do you see me shut down? Where do you see me move from being like open-hearted, totally present, right? Shining. And then suddenly I'm like this. Show me help me to see my patterns. Help me to see my patterns of limitation. Patterns that limit love. Feel into that. Patterns that limit love. Patterns that limit grace flowing through you. Patterns that limit you giving your gifts. Patterns that limit the goodness, limit feelings of goodness, feelings of being on purpose, feelings of being fulfilled, patterns that limit that. Those are all up for deep transformation right now. That's Sedna. Like that's Sedna. That's Jupiter moving into Gemini, crossing Sedna. It's really powerful, really powerful. Okay. Whew, this is kind of exciting. I'm liking what we're getting into. Let's see what else we can get into. I just want to check our time really quick. It's almost like your moment to just take a deep breath. Commercial break. And we shall breathe together. All right. Let's feel. We're going to move on. We're going to move out of Sedna for a moment. And I want to talk a little more. What do I want to talk about? I think I want to give us a little more on Gemini, right? So Jupiter, we've talked about him. It's the expansion energy. It's expansive. It's grace-filled. It's blowing past upper limits. And then we talked about Sedna, changing from one form to another form, deep transformation, right? For you coming into immortality, into God, goddess form, right? Like really legitimately your unique genius, your full potential is unfolding, your highest potential, greatest potential, and what's required to get there. There's a price to pay. There's a price to pay. And the price is letting go of all the old stuff. The price to pay is letting go of the old patterns. The price to pay is letting go of the limits. And sometimes we don't know that they're limits. So let's talk about Gemini, this kind of third archetypal energy. These are all archetypal energies. So Gemini is the mind. So this is also why we might be feeling this much more than we maybe anticipated, is because many of us operate in the mind a lot. I know I have to use my mind a lot, like a lot. I spend a lot of time in my mind. Yeah, I also spend a lot of time in my body. I spend a lot of time in my heart. I spend a lot of time like in lower wisdom centers, right? I get to, that's my work in the world, is I get to do that. And I have very strong practices around all of that. But still, I spend a lot of time in my mind. This is requiring me to spend time in all different parts, but my mind, I definitely have to have it operating and working so that I can form words and communicate with you. Gemini is communication. It's communication. It's the mind. It's thoughts. It's thinking. And it's really fast. It's really fast. It's really fast communication. And so if we just had a big old grace bomb hit your mind, it hit your mind. For some of us, it can be feeling like our circuitry just got blown. And it can be nervous system too. So thoughts, right? Thoughts, it's quick, it's rapid fire. So it's not just mind and thought patterns. It can also be influencing your nervous system. So Jupiter moving into Gemini can be very influential on our nervous systems. It can be, this isn't everybody. This is not everybody, right? Some of us are very innately Gemini. Like we're very wired for Gemini energy. Like if you have sun, moon, I have Mars in Gemini, it's glorious, right? It's glorious. And so if we're innately wired for Gemini, it's pretty cruisy. Like it can be more cruisy, might not be for you. We're all on very different places on our path, and this will be hitting us in different places in our charts, and that your Sedna journey is your Sedna journey. So even if you have like sun, moon, ascendant all in Gemini, like this could be really tricky and challenging and very transformative and almost like dark night of the soul. So just know that it is whatever it is for you. And it can be a wide array of experiences happening right now. But for some, this can be very like at the start of this Jupiter moving into Gemini, which at the start started May 25th, the next couple of weeks can be a transition period for us where we really like want to be able to give ourselves some time to integrate this, right? Because it's not going away. We have a year of this. We have a year. And so it's okay. Let me be with my anxiety. It might be causing things like anxiety. I'm a stress monkey. I'm scatterbrained. That's Jupiter and Gemini. I'm scatterbrained. I can't make a decision if my life depended on it. Like, think about those sorts of things, right? I feel like I'm plugged into an electrical outlet. Like, oh my gosh, like what is this? So anything like that, my nerves are on the fritz, or my nerves are frayed, my nerves are fried. Like, sayings like that can be very much how we're experiencing. Some people are experiencing this. It can also be extraordinarily creative. It can also be extraordinarily creative in problem solving. And instead of like thinking of like A, B solutions, there's A, B, C, D, F solutions. And for some of us, that's beautiful. And we're wired to work in that way of just like, oh my God, this is great. I can manage a lot of information coming in. I can dance around all of this. I can make good decisions with all of this. This is glorious. For some of us, this might feel like the high of a lifetime, like, wow. But on the other side of the coin, right, depending on what our like unique blueprint is, on the other side of the coin, it can feel overwhelming, and can bring about that almost freeze pattern of like it just like frozen in overwhelm, or frozen from too many choices. So that's something to feel into. It's something to feel into. To me, some of the really positive things about Jupiter and Gemini for the next year is coming up with alternative solutions where we didn't see a solution before. There's suddenly a solution where we thought it was A or B options. There's suddenly C, D, E. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. It also, let me feel a little bit more. It's a lot about really blowing up. That's Jupiter, blowing up, like expanding beyond, blowing up. Expanding beyond limited thought patterns. Really and truly, that's going to be a big part of what Jupiter and Gemini is about for the whole year, is just blowing up thought patterns, belief systems, ways of looped thinking, where we just like get in like a mental loop, or we literally, like for some of us, it will be like we saw the world one way and suddenly we're actually perceiving it in a whole different way. Like, whoa, the world seemed to be smaller and suddenly there's just so much more. I don't want to say bigger. It's weird. It's weird because Jupiter makes everything bigger. So this is a little bit of the crunchy stuff too. That can be Jupiter and Gemini. Jupiter makes everything bigger, but Gemini is not necessarily big thinking. Gemini is more like detail-oriented thinking. Right? Detail-oriented thinking and choices. So there's an interesting mix here. There's a really interesting dynamic. Jupiter is associated with Sagittarius energy, right? Sagittarius energy is higher mind, right? Gemini is lower mind, not higher, better, lower, not as good at all, but just feel into that higher mind, higher education. Gemini is lower mind, the mind that we use every single day, right? Every single day. And the mind that we use every single day all of the time is being rewired. Feel into that. That's a thing that we're going to be affected by because we spend so much time in the mind. Because we spend so much time in the mind. We spend so much of our day using our mind, right? We're scrolling on our phone. We need to use our mind. We're having a conversation with someone. We need to use our mind. We're writing an email. We need to use our mind. We're at work. Most of our work, it's not dancing. Most of our work is not painting. And even when we are dancing and we are painting, there's parts of the mind that has to be used. Okay, so that's Gemini energy. So isn't that weird? An entire year of basically rewiring how you think. I don't know, just rewiring how you think. You're going to think different in a year. I don't know, that's kind of great. And to hold this intention, I love this. I love this about the Sedna part. To hold this intention that this is in my highest, greatest good. This is in my highest, greatest good. Because we're kicking it off with Jupiter conjunct Sedna. Jupiter conjunct Sedna, right? Kicking it off with this, and Sedna's take no prisoners. Take no prisoners, right? Like, here's your greatest potential. Here's your greatest potential. Let's do this thing. And the trine to Pluto right off the bat. So a couple days later, I think on the 2nd of June it actually is. So the 25th of May, Jupiter went in Gemini. The 2nd of June, Pluto trines Jupiter. That's a positive aspect, but it's a positive aspect that is still to the Lord of the underworld. It's still to the God of deep transformation. It's still to the God of death and rebirth. So yes, while it's a positive Trines are good. They're positive. They're benevolent. So yes, great. Here, benevolent for death and rebirth. Let me give you some grace, some really good stuff around deep transformation. That's still Hades. That's still Pluto. Like Pluto is Pluto around power, right? So it's good, but it's still the depths. It's still around power. It's still around your empowerment. And Pluto kind of doesn't care. He doesn't care how much of a death. What did we talk about with Sedna? She has to have her fingers cut off by the external world, and then she dies. She drowns, right? She drowns. Her human self drowns. Death for rebirth. Pluto, Sedna, death for rebirth. Same thing, right? It's Pluto. He holds your old self dies so your new self can be born. This is big. All right, that's point number 4. That's point number 4. There is a death for a rebirth happening here. It may be that you're feeling it now. It may be that it's so deep, Sedna in the depths of the ocean, Pluto in the depths of the underworld. It may be that it's so deep that you're not aware of it yet. Maybe you're getting like little sprinkles of some change going on, right? Or getting little sprinkles of like, whoa, life's not that comfortable right now. Like something's off, or you're just like sensing into it because it's the setup. It's the setup. It's the setup for this whole year of Jupiter and Gemini. Woo! All right. It's been beautiful to be here with you. I'm really glad that we got to dive into Jupiter and Gemini. Those 4 points, I would go back and revisit them. If you feel to, I would dive into the challenge and I would go straight to the Jupiter. Everything's got replays. Sorry, not replays. Everything's got timestamps. All the sessions have timestamps. Look for the Jupiter timestamp and go do that activation. And it ends on the 30th, the night of the 30th. So if you are seeing this before then, challenge replays are up and available. All right, it's great to be here with you. I'm always in the comments. If there's anything that you want to share, I would love to hear it. Subscribe if that serves you and feels good for you. I don't know what else to tell you. Come join me in the Facebook group. We hang out a ton in the Facebook group. There's lots of fun stuff going on. Ooh. Here's a wild announcement. You ready for it? I don't have any other details other than this. In-person retreat in Ibiza in November. 21 spots. It's tight, intimate, sweet little circle. We did an Ibiza retreat last year. The Path of the Priestess. This is the Path of the Priestess, but it includes archetypes. Priestessing with the archetypes. Anyways, if being in person sings to you, rewilding sings to you, either of those two kind of themes weaving and mixing together, even if they don't sing to you and you just know that you are meant to be in Ibiza on a rewilding retreat, we'll get those details out soon, but fun to kind of announce it here. All right. I love you all. And I will see you. Our next video out will be the new moon in Gemini. All right. Love you all, and I will see you soon. Mwah.